Hi, this is Brittany Nichols with North Star Acres, and today I'm going to show you how to utilize Google Sheets to keep both breeding and lamb records. In our first video, we went through basic record keeping and basic functions of Google Sheets, and then we also did a little bit with treatments, with examples with drop-down menus, etc. So in this video, the first thing that we're going to look at is breeding records. So I have already created a new tab here on the bottom and renamed it as 2025 Breeding. And then I've also added in some different headers. So information that we're going to keep, obviously the very first column is going to be the ewe. We utilize a lot of names with ours. We can also input tag numbers, whatever you use to ID your ewes. And then we put what ram they're with. We are going to have different options here because we utilize both AI and natural breeding. So our first ewe here was AI'd to bingo. These bottom two are both natural ewes. So that is why the top one is going to have a cleanup, because after our AI ewes get bred, we give them several weeks and then we're going to put them in with a cleanup ram. All of our rams wear harnesses with crayons on them so that when they mark the ewes, we actually have the exact dates as to when they were marked. We also utilize seeders to synchronize all of our ewes cycles just to make lambing easier so that they're in bigger groups. Same for weaning, it just makes the whole process easier. So I put in what our seeder dates were, so when we put them in and when we took them out. The out date is going to match when we gave the ewes PG 600, as well as we keep track of how much PG 600 each ewe got. For the AI ones, I used more than I did for the natural ones. We keep records as to how much we use and what the results were to see what the correlation is, but haven't done it enough years here to have a real true trend. Other information that we're going to keep is the date that the ram was released. For the AI ones, it's just going to be the same as their actual breeding date. But for our natural ones, we stagger it, so we have two different rams that we use. So we're going to keep track of what days what rams went out and what group, obviously each ewe that was in. Our marked dates, I'll keep up to 3 marked dates. Once they get past this 3 mark though, there's typically something wrong. So the ewe might be sick or she's just not going to breed. They're typically not going to go past this 3. So the goal is to be within the first 2 here. For this spreadsheet, I just put the mark date as the first one for these guys, for the sake of doing our estimated due dates. The last thing on my header is this last year's lamb. So I'm going to add notes to myself as to how last year's lambing went, because it's really, really easy to get caught up in lambing when you're lambing, 10 at a time or whatever, to kind of lose track as to what actually happened. And so I'll leave notes for myself as to, did they have singles, twins, triplets? Did I end up fostering somebody? Did they have a stillborn? Whatever could have happened during their lambing, I like to leave notes for myself as it's happening. That way I can go back and put it with the ewe the next year to give myself kind of a heads up. So let's look at estimated due date. You can obviously go in a calendar and count out how many days later until your expected due date. For sheep, typically you're going to have an average somewhere between 145 and 149, which makes average 147 days gestation. What I like to do in all of my records is 145 days. And the reason why I use the lower number on the range is so that I give myself a couple of days heads up, because a lot of times I'll look at my list before I go to the barn and say, okay, this one, and this one are coming up on their due date, and so then I start watching them. Easier said than done when you have 10 plus due on the same day. So I try to give myself a couple days grace by putting it as early in that range as I can, so that I know when to start watching. So if per se I counted out on the calendar and went from July 24th, the date that I would end up getting is December 16th. Okay, so I could count that. The other nice thing is I could actually put it in as a function into Google Sheets, so this is actually easier. So if I go into this cell, so I3, and I click on it, it says August 9th, But if I go up into the actual function of what's in that cell where my mouse is, it says f of x, so the function is 8-9-2025. What that's telling you is that it recognizes it as an actual calendar date. So what we can do with that is under estimated due date, I can double click and hit the equal sign, hit my August 9th, plus 145 days, enter, and it is going to tell me that my estimated due date is January 1st, which is correct. So that is one way that you can utilize Google Sheets to do the math for you and calculate your days. Now this is not only useful in breeding, but maybe you had an entire list of ewes and you needed that date for CEDAR dates, or you just did some kind of a routine vaccination or deworming and you need to know when to do that again in X amount of days. Or maybe something that you use has a withdrawal time and you need to know when they could go to market. So there's all kinds of ways that you can utilize that function in these records. Something else that you'll notice is that it wants to do an autofill. So the suggested autofill is to keep the same formula in the cell below it. So we could do, yes, I want that cell to carry the same function, and it's going to automatically put that in for us. Now, if I delete that back out of there, maybe I didn't autofill, but I do want that same function in the cell below. If you wave your mouse over this blue dot, a little bullseye pops up. If you click it and drag it down, you're going to get the same result. It's just dragging that function down into the cell below. Okay. So that's how you can get Google Sheets to do your math for you. Now, let's go into some lamb records. Again, I've already put my headers in here just to make this quick. So the information that we keep as we lamb is I'm going to keep a tag number as to what each of my lambs is going to be, what the sex was, who the dam was, who the sire was, what the date of birth was. The CDT 1 and 2, our ewes are vaccinated with CDT before they lamb, but the lambs are still going to get 2 booster shots before they ever go to someone else's farm. So I keep track of what dates that they're getting it. They also get at least 1 BOC shot. If they need a second one, then they'll get it, and I'll write that down, but all of them at least get 1. What the weaning date is, who they were sold to, what the price was, and then this last one, again, is just kind of notes back to myself. So sometimes I'll put in notes from the previous year, sometimes I'll put in notes, maybe whoever that we sold to is letting us know, hey, I won this year. I'll put that in so it gets carried over into the next year. So I threw an example in here, that Reba's lamb last year, she had a reserve ram lamb. So I threw that in there that the half brother was a reserve ram. Okay. Something that I like to keep track of with my price. So we're just going to throw some random numbers in here. Whoop. Something like that. Not necessarily that that's what those guys would get, but just so that we have some numbers to go off of. But since I utilize Sheets for all of my records, obviously my finances I keep track of in Google Sheets. So in my actual record book, I have a whole nother tab that I'm going to keep track of all of my profit, all of my spendings, whatever it is. So I'm going to keep track of a sum here. So I'm going to show you how to put in a sum function to get your total for an entire column. So if I had all of my lambs sold, at the very bottom somewhere, I would put in equal sign, and it automatically wants to do it because sum is going to be the most common function. So you're going to do SUM, all capital letters, parenthesis, and then since it is already picking up on all these values, you can hit enter, or you can copy or like click and drag what cells you want to be included in that sum, hit enter, and it's going to automatically add those up for you. Now this value is then one that I'm going to copy and paste over into my actual spreadsheet with all my finances in, and that's going to be my profit for my lambs for the year. So I might have sale barn lambs in here too. I will include what I got for every single one of my lambs, whether it was sold to an actual person or sale barn, where it went, and have a full total on the lamb crop from the year. Alright, so those are our breeding and lambing records. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, but hopefully that helps anybody who is looking for ideas of how to keep these records. So thank you for watching, and good luck.